So welcome everybody. This is the last part of our Design Basics free course. If you missed the previous two parts, we have them in our YouTube channel. We covered layout and then we also covered typography. And now the last part is color. So by the end of this free course, we're going to package everything together and you can sign up to get the full presentation, which you can actually follow with the videos that we have on YouTube. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, you can see my screen. I'm gonna open the chat as well, just so I can have it here on the side and see what you guys are talking about. Okay, great. So today we're gonna talk about color. It's one of my favorite topics in design. If you know me, you know that I don't shy away from color at all in my designs. And I really want to maybe influence, even if it's just one person here, to use color on their projects more confidently by following all of the information that I'm going to share with you here. So most of the times, all of our clients or most of our clients come with a brand design in place. But most times than not, those brand colors were chosen with intent. And your job as a designer is to really convey and tell the story of your client's purpose or idea or business through your design, which the biggest part, one of the biggest part of it is color. So when you're looking at color, you can communicate different ideas. Do you want to communicate boldness, serenity, excitement? All of those colors have a psychology behind it. And that's what we're going to start talking about today. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to cover is color psychology, then color harmony, components and rules, best practices, and tools. I have a little surprise at the end that we can do to make this a little bit interactive and see how you guys do. So let's start with analyzing some projects that have the color red. So I don't know if you guys know, I actually found this online, but 68% of people relate the color red with love. Now, if we see this project, we see that it's just like super moody. It feels like it's in an intimate environment. And then the color just enhances the whole idea that this is sort of like a love collection, a jewelry love collection that a partner can get to their partner. So it's just like really communicating that idea of love. Now, if we take the same color, but we add different elements to it, we completely change that message. Because in this example, we're seeing bold typography, we're seeing sort of like graphical elements that are sort of like notes taking of like news or articles. And then everything gets wrapped up with the images, which are really telling the message of what this Rolling Stone website is. So right then and there, we have the same color, but the way that it was executed completely changes the message. Now, if we see color from the cultural standpoint, we can see the difference of how the West versus the East sees it. Now, I know this is just general knowledge. We know that, for example, in Asia, the red color symbolizes long life, happiness, and all that stuff. While in the West, we see red as either love or blood or passion and things like that. So obviously, I'm not going to go through every color, but the message that I want to send here is that sometimes we're so in the bustle and hustle of the projects that we have every day that we actually forget that there's real impact on the colors that we choose for our clients, or the way that we compose the design to communicate what the purpose of our client's website is. So always have that in the top of your mind. This information is all over the internet. I don't want to just sit here and give you the psychology for every single color, because we'll stay here for 30 days. But I think it's really important to highlight. Now, the color wheel. The color wheel is like your map for color. So this is going to get a little bit theoretical, but I really think it's very, very important for you guys to understand why the color wheel, it's going to be like the map that it's going to pave the way for all of your design decisions regarding color. So as all of you know, we have our primary colors, which are yellow, red, and blue. Now, if we combine those primary colors, we get our secondary colors, which are green, orange, and purple. And then the tertiary colors are the byproduct of our secondary and primary colors, which are lime green, that's sort of like a marigold, which is that little yellowish one. We have that darker orange, magenta, and then we have that blue, purple, and sky blue. Now, after we understand the three categories of our colors in the color wheel, we have three components to consider. These components are going to help us manipulate color. So if you have that really ingrained in your brain, it'll be much easier to come up with a beautiful palette that it's harmonious. So the first thing that we have is the hue. So the hue is any color in the color wheel to its maximum saturation. So super bright, just the actual color. Then we add into the mix the saturation. The saturation is going to allow us to play with each hue's vibrancy. So as you can see, we have the red as an example. The max saturation is going to be super bright, and then the lower saturation is going to be a gray, no color. And then lastly, we have value. So value is going to help us sort of like level that color into its lightest or darkest version. So then after this, we kind of go into like a third level, which are your color variations. So your color variations are shade, tint, and tone. And those three components are also going to help you, as the word says it, variate the color, so change its impact. So the first one that we're going to talk about is going to be the shade. So the shade is basically your regular hue. You add a little bit of black, and then you get a shade. So why is the shade important? Because the shade is going to help you create depth and contrast in your designs. And why is it important? Because of this. So if we see, now we're talking more about art, and this is something that can be applied in anything in design. So as you can see, when you add a shade to a color, you darken it. So that helps you give that contrast and depth to your composition or your website or your painting, anything. So if we're talking, for example, about a website, let's say that we have a heading and some body copy. Sorry, my dog is barking. So what you need to think about is, okay, I want my heading to pop more than the body copy. So maybe I'll add a little bit of shade to the heading just to make it a little bit darker without having to change the weight of the typography. So then we go into tint. So the difference with tint is that it softens the color because we're adding white to it. Instead of the shade that we added black, in this one we're adding white. And what that does is that it lightens the color, and it just makes the appearance of whatever you're coloring just a little light and delicate. And finally, we have tone. So in tone, we have a regular hue, we add a little bit of gray, and then we have this like washed out sort of color that has a lot of gray tones into it. And the key with this element is that you want to have those tones in your color palette, because that will help you create a sense of harmony and cohesion in your palette. And we're going to see this when we do the practice or the experiment that I have at the end for you guys. Finally, then we have temperature. So as we all know, we have our cool colors and we have our warm colors. Why is this important? Because if you think about the cool colors, you're thinking about colors that make you feel calm, relaxed. It's just like a vibe. So when you think about cooler colors, you're thinking about maybe insurance companies, corporate clients, maybe, I don't know, just something that has like a social impact behind it, maybe. And when you're talking about warm colors, you are focused more in communicating energy, because it's like this color symbolize like the sun, sort of like an upbeat energy. So always think about that when you are going to start a design from scratch. Like, what is it that you're going to communicate? Do you want the user to feel relaxed? Is the brand like trustworthy, or do you want them to feel happy and excited when they land on your site? So let's look at two examples. So this one is from I forgot the name of the locomotive. So this is I think it's they're investors, I think. So obviously all blue, super, well, I mean, it's not that calming, but it kind of feels like very corporate. It feels safe. It's very clean. They're combining it with white, so sort of monochromatic and just very calm. And then if we go into the warm colors, we see this Spotify website that it's just super upbeat. It right away gives you the idea that it's just like really happy and like playful, and we have the little like stickers. So you can see the difference between the two, and then the feeling that it gives you. But you're probably thinking, okay, Melissa, like this is a lot. Like, how am I going to combine all this stuff? Like, we have hue, saturation, value, shade, tint, tone, like, damn, like, how do I do that? And you can do that through color harmony. So as I was saying before, what do you want to convey? Do you want a calming website? Then in that case, you can use analogous colors. Sorry, guys, for the pronunciation. You know, I'm not great at that. Or do you want to create a high energy vibe? So then in that case, maybe you can try your complementary harmony colors. So the key here is to find the perfect balance of colors so you can communicate that final idea to your clients. Let me have a sip of wine. Okay, so the first color harmony is monochromatic. So when you think about monochromatic, it's just one color on the color wheel. So always associated with like a gradient. What are gradients in nature? The ocean, a sunrise. So it's just grabbing one color and adding different shades of that color, changing the tint and all that stuff. If we see this example, we can see how beautiful they have used the monochromatic harmony. I wish I would have linked this website, but I just grabbed the screenshot and didn't put the link, but it's an awards. And if you look for like the search for inspo and you put purple, you can see it there. But it's beautiful because they really just owned the color purple and then just encapsulated each section into a shade and a tint of it. So if you can see, we can see that in here, they have this like subtle gradient with purple, but then in here, it's sort of like a tint. So like the lighter version of it. And if you scroll through the website, it's just all of the shades of purple. Then we go into complementary colors. So as you can see on the color wheel, complementary colors are the ones in front of each other on the wheel. And if you want to relate it to something so you never forget it, it's like two best friends that are completely different, but somehow they complement each other. So that's the case with green and red. And if we can see in this example, I wanted to show you how to inject color into a website without being so obvious. So all of the courses that I was seeing on color online on YouTube, the examples were like really obvious. Like it was just like, you know, the graphic with the color and then the little copy. But in this example, what I really loved is that they're actually using those complementary colors through typography and photography. And look how beautiful it works. They're using a tone of red, which is turned into brown. Then we have that pop of the red color on the typography. And then we close everything up with a beautiful photography that has that green tone. So it's really impactful, but it just works. Then we go into the analogous colors. So they're basically neighbors in your color wheel. So associated with the colors of fall. You start with your oranges and it goes down to your yellows. And if we see in this example, again, something that it's not obvious on the way they use color, but it works. They're starting with the base, which is your yellow, but with a very strong tint to make it almost white, so it's not overpowering. Then they're adding the touches of orange with the gradient, the graphical circle, and the photography, and then adding pops of red here and there through photography. So this is a really good example of how to use that color harmony. Then we go into the triadic color harmony, which is a rectangle. So if you see on your wheel, you have your yellow, your red, and your blue. If we see in this example, they're actually using those exact colors, but look how they made use of the tints, of the shades, and the tones to really dim down the colors. I feel like these are one of the harder color harmonies to create palettes from, because the colors are so strong, all of them. But if you really start playing with the shades and everything, the tints and the hues and all that stuff, you can actually get to a beautiful, harmonious design without it being super empowering. Then we go into the split complementary. So always think about the fork. So we have a blue, and then right in front on a V, you have the two colors that are complementary, but split in half. And we have yellow and orange. Now, this combination is also hard to design with if you leave them on their full saturation, because obviously they're very, very strong colors, and you don't really know like how to separate them, how to make their hierarchy work. But in this example that we have here, I think they absolutely killed it. This is a website from C2 Montreal, which is a tech event. And the whole website is full of color. But I just love how they took something so primary and they just probably started like playing with this and came up with this beautiful design. And they're using all of the split complementary colors. We have our reds, our yellows, our blues, and somehow they all work. So you're probably thinking, okay, Melissa, but like, how do I decide which color takes center stage? I mean, if I'm doing a palette with a split complementary color harmony, what do I decide which one's going to be my background, my secondary color, and stuff like that? Well, with the rule of 60, 30, 10. And basically what this rule teaches us is that we take our main color and we make it the 60% of our website. The secondary color, which is the 30%, and then your accents are just going to take 10% of your website. What are your accents? They could be your CTAs, your link blocks, and stuff like that. And if you want to even take it a little bit further and you have a really colorful website, then you can break that down to 60, 30, 5, and 5. So instead of having the last 10%, you split that up in two and you have a beautiful palette of 4. So practice is really, really important. Make sure that you're always, testing out like different colors, different color harmonies, so you can get better at it. So I want to share this with you guys. Please tell me if you can actually work on it or maybe copy and paste and put it on a Figma file. But I wanted to give you this example. Let me just share my screen because I think you guys can see Figma, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I made a color palette maker for you guys. So all of the color harmonies are here. And I made little examples of how you can make the different palettes based on each color harmony. So if you see here in the split complementary, which we just spoke about, you can see that we start with our blue, we go into our marigold, and then we go into our red orange. If we take those, let's say we want to do a palette of 4 colors, we start with our blue and then we play with a little bit of shade. Then we go into our red orange and we wanted to just dim it out a little bit more. So we're adding a little bit of white to it. And then we're taking that same blue, but we're adding a little bit of brightness to it and a little bit of tint. And then finally, as I was telling you before, remember how I said that the tone is really important to just make your palette very harmonious? This is what is happening with this palette right now. I added a little bit of tone, so much grayer than the original saturation of the hue, so it can serve as my background. Now, if we see our rule here of the 60, 30, 5, and 5, you can see that I chose the dimmer color to be our 60%, which is going to be our background. Our 30% is going to be our secondary color. So this is the color that I'm going to use for my copy. Now, this color, I will use variations of it through my design. So I'll start with 100% for my headings. And then for my body copy, maybe I'll reduce that opacity or that intensity of the saturation of the color to like 80%, 70%. And finally, I'm adding 2 accent colors for my buttons and for my link blocks, or maybe for some like decorative elements like arrows or, numbers and stuff like that. So if you go here on the bottom, we have let me actually open it here because I don't have edit access. Can you see my screen? No, let me stop. I moved screens, so. Okay, I can't grab the controls, guys, what the hell? Okay, so let me just share it again.
I love your sweater, Melissa. You look
Thank
great.
you. Okay, so now you can see me here. Okay, great. So if we grab this rectangle here, we can see the saturation on each one of these colors. So that will actually help you see how much saturation each color has and how it relates to each one of the neighbors inside of that color palette. You want to make sure that there's a lot of difference in saturation between them so you can have a nice combination of colors. And the way you do that is just adding the color mask to it or effect to it. So yeah, so you can just grab this this whole palette maker, remove the colors on the bottom, and I would love after the party if you guys want to like play around with different colors by applying those things that we just went through. So shade, tint, tone, saturation, and the value of each color, and you'll see how much easier it is to create a color palette for your projects. And then once you have that, you apply your 60-30-10 or 60-30-5-5 rule, and it'll be just so much easier to have a better understanding of what to do. I wish Corey was here. I don't think he's here, but Corey had that question on the last course video. Like, I have a client that has 5 colors. Like, how do I do that? So just start by manipulating the colors a little bit. Clients usually don't really care if you manipulate a little bit the colors, unless obviously they're a big company and they have a established brand identity. But if they're open to changing, I really suggest playing with the color and just refreshing their brand a little bit. And then once you have that, you apply your rule. So let me go back to the presentation. Okay, great. Okay, so next we have tools. So I did a little list here of websites that if you still think that you suck at making palettes and you still need a robot to do it for you, these websites are great. They'll basically do the whole process for you. You can even drop an image of like nature, your mom's like dresser, I don't know, whatever, but like they can give you a full color palette and even give you the RGB, the hex code, the CMYK, everything. And even more stuff. They're like really amazing. And then finally, this is something that Gabriel shared with me a while back, and I wanted to open a discussion between us because I think it's important to really analyze what's happening with color nowadays. This is a thread from this guy, the cultural tutor. I'm going to share the link on the chat so you guys can see the full thread. And it's basically talking about how nowadays color is like really dying off. Like if we see houses, we don't really see much color. The restaurants, like look at the McDonald's, like that's wild. So I think it's time that everybody just unmute yourselves and we can just discuss that a little bit more because I feel it's really interesting.
Hey guys, Melissa, you're right on point about the especially with homes now. I have a lot of new constructions near me and a high contrast of either a gray or a black or a hint of blue in the grays. But I have to say about like 90% of the new builds around me have this white and black contrast combination, and they don't have any in between colors. It's like almost like colors absent in construction.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I remember like a few years back, I wanted to buy a house and I was like walking through every house. And when I tell you it was the most bland experience in my life, like everything was beige. And also Florida has a thing with beige. I don't understand it. All the houses are beige. everything is beige and brown and like cement. It's like so sad.
Well, it's really more has to do with like a cultural thing. Like if you go in the Caribbean
Yeah.
or even in
Oh
Central and
yeah.
South America,
Yeah.
you have a lot of stonework. So even if you don't even have to go even out there, you could just go to like the West Coast to Arizona, those very
Mhm.
arid states.
Mhm.
They don't use any of these like those plastics or anything. They want to use the stone because it actually keeps the house cool because the stone absorbs the
Right,
heat.
right.
So that's the whole point. That's why most homes you see on like they have the terracotta rooftops because that serves the same purpose. It takes in the heat, but yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's like for some reason in construction, it they're like completely put aside color and they were like, you know what, we're just making these monotone homes, and it's up to we leaving it up to the buyers to decorate the home and put some color of their own instead of us influencing their taste.
Yep, exactly. 100%. I mean, I do get it. Like when you're gonna buy a house, you want sort of like a blank slate. You don't want anybody's
Right.
like taste on it. But but even in that thread, like if you see and scroll down, like even the movies are like washed down or darker. And I feel like also, and I think I've read this somewhere, but um we are so busy consuming information all the time that I think the lack of color is on an effort to bring that peace and that calmness when you're in certain spaces.
We literally thought the same thing. I was just waiting for. I was gonna say like I was peeing and literally it popped in my head like couldn't it be possible like we're
You were like, me.
yeah, like okay, like we're trying to find that sort of like sense of nature or sort of like calmness because
Yeah.
now everything is like oh it needs to be minimalist, like not so many things in the house or anywhere because basically like all the colors is in our phones, like we're always looking at colors and as you said like super extra stimulated on that.
Hmm. Pierre has a good point here. He says, is it that we associate flashy poppy colors with like spammy advertising?
Not at all. I mean, I remember in the 90s, I used to dress like, well, I mean, I still dress super colorful, but not used to. But in the 90s, it was like so different how my parents,
Baby, you were a baby. Shut up in the 90s.
well, when I was dressing and I was, I was having my style, whether I was a child or
Yeah. I also think it's a cultural thing because, for example, in London, most of the people, like the majority of the population, dress with muted colors. So you have black, white, gray, beige. While where I'm from, Colombia, we are in a hot city with water next to it. So wearing full on flowers from head to toe is normal. If I wear that here, I'll look like a freaking clown. So I think that it also depends on the culture.
Yeah.
Eric types something like color equal give me attention. What do you think about
I
it?
see.
What do you think about it? I think if we think about that concept that he's saying, like that statement, we can actually think about the opposite. Like what happens if
One second.
Yeah, I was responding to Pierre's comment, and then I was thinking there's actually there's a community like an hour away from me who has all these rules in place about how color and objects and businesses interact with that community. So there's these rules in place of like even power lines have to be treated in a certain treatment so that it blends into the trees and doesn't stand out. Company signs on the roadway are like no taller than 5 feet and in neutral colors. They can't use their brand colors. Like if you put in your business there, like there's rules in place for you to have that.
Oh yeah.
and it's just interesting to me. Like there's localization too, in different communities where if you're going to be here, these are the rules you have to abide by. I don't know what it means. It's just interesting to me.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah,
interesting. I mean,
exactly.
as I didn't know, like you were referring to Pierre's, but it's like we might think as well, like, oh, if it's give attention, then if we were, well, black or neutral colors, like, where like it's not interested to look at, maybe, or like we don't need attention. Is that maybe when we're talking about like the traffic and the trees, like that makes a lot of sense in like for safety. Safetiness, like that would be like super understandable. What about like other aspects, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you also see like luxury shopping places, like there's one in Paris. I don't, which one is it, Pierre, where all the shopping is that are like high end. You don't see a sign that is not made out of like that gold metal thing.
G.
Like you won't see like a big like Prada or whatever. No, I don't think it's Lafayette. No, it's I don't know, but it's a street and it looks like they're all houses, residential houses. But they're actually all stores, and all of the stores have like a plaque, a plaque. How do you say that? Plaque?
Plaque, yeah.
For the logo. So everything looks super clean and the visual pollution is really non-existent. So yeah, I also feel like in that sense, maybe it's just to keep the atmosphere like as classy as possible. So yeah, I just think that it's like a combination of things, like the location, the demographic that it's catering to, the culture, the city where we are at. Yeah, it's just like a combination of things.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
to that point, like what you were just saying, like those were shopping experiences. Those aren't places where you live, though. Like you think of, like I think someone else in the chat said the areas near bodies of water tend to be more colorful. You're going there to like get away and have a vacation, or depending on like where it's at in the world, like Iceland, their capital city is known for its colorful buildings because its environment is so muted and dark, and the sands are dark, and like so. You want to go live there, you want to experience that. When you go shopping,
Yeah,
you know,
Also
exactly.
because of the housing infrastructure in those places, like you can, because for example, you don't see like imagine New York, like the whole thing, the whole building, all of them super colorful. I mean, it could look super nice, but it would be a lot.
Well, that's kind of like how Miami is. Like Miami has the cement or glass buildings, but they have found that light can add color. So when you see Miami skyline from South Beach, it's just a beautiful, colorful skyline. And it's just a beautiful way to use color in a city. But again, it's next to a body of water.
You could
Yeah,
also
but
add it
that's
as
not true. Like,
And also the lighting.
think the Greek islands. They're white and a little bit of blue. Like, it depends on the area, because in the history, like in Greece, you had to hide because there were pirates, because there were like attackers, and we dress a lot in black. Well, it's very weird because we're under freaking sun all the time.
Yeah.
So it's location is not the it's not the only thing. It's so much more complex. Think about the Scandinavians, that they should use black to attract the sun and keep warm, but they don't.
But they're full of color.
White and beige and boring. So it's kind of like, and then at the same time, the Balkans, it's like, dude, it's a mess.
Well, but something about the Scandinavians dressing with color, if it's so cold and everything in the cold weather dies, you want to dress in color because you want to lift your spirits.
But
At
they don't
least
wear-
that's how I see it.
They don't wear color though. They're beige and white.
Scandinavians?
No.
Really?
Yeah, they're like
I follow Scandinavian fashion, and it's like the most colorful thing in the world.
I don't
if
know,
it's just
individuals
like the
maybe, but
influencers.
like every TV show, every place like I've been, it's like I was in the same house with the Finnish girl. Like
She
there's
was
no
all black.
color. The most color is like we call it in Greek, rotten apple. So it's this kind of like salmony kind of almost color. This is the highest, like blush. Like was so
Wow.
freaking boring.
Right. Wow.
Like mid-century Scandinavian design has more color, had greens, had like oranges, had more spice.
I love color. I just love color, but I also love the muted colors. But I just feel like color just uplifts you. I hope you guys like the presentation. I hope you guys learned something from it and that you actually apply it. Obviously, now there's so many tools that we can use to get to a palette, but I think it's important to have this basics again clear so it's easier to manipulate them yourself and put that human touch to it that like you know a machine won't be able to do. So if you want the full presentation, by the way, we have the 2 past parties, which were layout and typography. This presentation is 87 slides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to package it. And if you want to receive it, you can just download it. I'll have it ready on the site or on Discord on our server. You can download it and then follow the videos because I really think it has good stuff there. So yeah, thank you so much.